The phone call lasted 4 minutes and 37 seconds. I know because I stared at the screen the entire time, watching those numbers climb while my whole life crumbled into dust. My husband Marcus didn't know he hadn't hung up. He didn't know I was still on the line, frozen in the parking lot of Whole Foods with a cart full of organic groceries for the nursery reveal party I was planning for my best friend, Tasha. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. That's all it took to destroy 12 years of marriage, 23 years of friendship, and every dream I'd ever built my life around. Just wait until her father's check clears, Marcus said, his voice so casual it made my stomach turn. Then we'll take the baby and leave her with nothing. Camille's too trusting. She won't see it coming until it's already done. I heard Tasha laugh. That same laugh I'd heard at sleepovers when we were 13. The same laugh that echoed through my wedding reception when she caught my bouquet. The same laugh that filled my living room just last week when she told me she was pregnant and asked me to be the godmother. She really thinks you love her, Tasha said, and I could hear the smirk in her voice. It's actually kind of sad. She's so desperate to be wanted that she can't see what's right in front of her face. I dropped the phone. Right there, in the middle of the parking lot, surrounded by strangers loading groceries into their cars, I dropped to my knees and felt something inside me shatter so completely that I wondered if I would ever be whole again. Let me take you back. Let me show you how I got here, how I became the woman on her knees in a parking lot, drowning in a betrayal so deep it felt like dying. My name is Camille Richardson Hayes, and for most of my life, I believed I was one of the lucky ones. My father, William Richardson, built his fortune from nothing, starting with a small accounting firm in Detroit and growing it into one of the largest black-owned financial consulting companies in the Midwest. I grew up in a beautiful home in Bloomfield Hills, attended the best schools, and never wanted for anything material. But money couldn't buy what I needed most, the feeling of being enough. My mother, Diane, was a complicated woman. Beautiful, refined, and utterly disappointed in the daughter she'd been given. I wasn't graceful like her. I wasn't naturally thin or effortlessly elegant. I was awkward and bookish, more comfortable with numbers than people, more at home in my father's office than at the cotillions and charity galas my mother dragged me to. You'll never find a husband if you don't learn to be more presentable, she'd say, looking at me like I was a problem to be solved rather than a daughter to be loved. My father adored me. He called me his little genius, his future CEO, his legacy. But even his love couldn't fill the hole my mother's criticism carved into my soul. I grew up believing that I was somehow deficient, that love was something I would have to earn through achievement and sacrifice rather than something I deserved simply for existing. Tasha came into my life when we were both 12 years old. She had just moved to our neighborhood, her mother working as a nurse at Beaumont Hospital after their divorce left them starting over. Tasha was everything I wasn't: confident, charismatic, effortlessly beautiful. She had the kind of smile that made people stop and stare, the kind of presence that filled a room. I never understood why she chose me. Out of all the girls at our school, all the popular kids who would have welcomed her with open arms, Tasha picked me. She sat next to me at lunch on her first day and said, "You look like someone who knows the real tea around here. Want to be friends?" For 23 years, she was my person. My ride or die. The sister I never had. I told her everything. Every insecurity, every fear, every secret I'd never shared with another living soul. When my mother's criticisms cut too deep, Tasha was there to remind me of my worth. When I doubted myself, she was my biggest cheerleader. When I fell in love with Marcus, she was the first person I called. "Girl, he's fine," she said when I showed her his picture. "But more importantly, does he treat you right? Does he see you? Really see you?" I thought he did. God help me, I really thought he did. Marcus Hayes entered my life at my father's 65th birthday party. He was working as an associate at a rival firm, invited by one of my father's business partners. Tall, handsome, with a smile that made my knees weak and a charm that felt almost too good to be true. Looking back now, I should have listened to that instinct. That tiny voice in the back of my mind that whispered, "No one this perfect wants someone like you," without a reason. But I silenced that voice. I buried it under the warmth of his attention, the intoxication of being chosen by someone so desirable. For the first time in my life, I felt beautiful. Wanted. Worthy. Marcus pursued me with an intensity that swept me off my feet. Flowers at my office. Surprise dinners at restaurants I'd only dreamed of trying. Weekend getaways that felt like scenes from a romance novel. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world, like nothing mattered except making me happy. "I've never met anyone like you, Camille," he'd say, looking into my eyes with what I believed was genuine devotion. "You're so real. So authentic. Most women I meet are all about appearances and games, but you're different." I married him 11 months after we met. My mother was thrilled. Finally, her disappointing daughter had done something right. My father was more cautious, his businessman's instincts making him wary of Marcus's smooth charm and ambitious nature. "Just be careful, sweetheart," Daddy said the night before my wedding. "Make sure he loves you for you, not for what comes with you." "Daddy, Marcus doesn't care about money," I assured him. "He's building his own career. He's going to be successful on his own terms." I believed it. I believed it with every fiber of my being. But the truth is, I was so desperate to be loved that I would have believed anything. The first 5 years of our marriage were beautiful. At least, they seemed that way through the rose-colored glasses I wore so willingly. Marcus left his firm and started his own company with money I gave him from my trust fund. A loan, he called it, with grand promises of paying me back once he was established. I didn't care about the money. I cared about supporting my husband, about being the wife my mother always told me I needed to be, supportive, nurturing, putting his needs above my own. Tasha was there through all of it. She helped me plan our wedding, decorated our first home, celebrated our anniversaries. She was at every dinner party, every holiday gathering, every milestone of our marriage. When Marcus and I struggled to conceive and the doctors told us the chances were slim, Tasha held me while I cried and promised we would find another way. "You're going to be a mother, Camille," she said. "I know it. One way or another, you're going to have the family you've always dreamed of." I started exploring surrogacy. The process was overwhelming, legally, emotionally, financially. My father offered to cover all the costs, writing a check for $300,000 to fund the journey toward parenthood. That was my father, always showing his love through provision and protection. And then Tasha came to me with an offer that made me weep with gratitude. "Let me carry the baby," she said, her eyes shining with what I thought were tears of love. "Camille, you've been there for me through everything. When I had nothing, you gave me everything. Let me do this for you. Let me help you become a mother." I should have asked more questions. I should have wondered why Tasha, who had always been so adamant about not wanting children, would suddenly offer to spend 9 months of her life carrying mine. I should have noticed how her eyes flickered to Marcus when she made the offer, how something unspoken passed between them in that moment. But I didn't see it. I was too blinded by hope, too overwhelmed by the promise of finally having the child I'd prayed for. The embryo transfer was successful. Tasha was pregnant with my baby, mine and Marcus's baby, created from my eggs and his genetic material, growing in my best friend's womb. I was going to be a mother. After years of heartbreak and disappointment, I was finally going to hold my child in my arms. I had never been happier. And I had never been more naive. The signs were there, scattered throughout those months like breadcrumbs I refused to follow. Marcus started working late more frequently. His phone was always face down on the table. He became distracted during conversations, his eyes drifting to some distant thought I couldn't access. When I asked if something was wrong, he'd smile and say he was just stressed about work, about the baby coming, about wanting everything to be perfect. I believed him. Of course I believed him. Because believing him meant believing in our marriage, in our future, in the life we were building together. Tasha's behavior changed too, but I attributed it to the pregnancy. She was tired often, canceling plans at the last minute. When we did spend time together, she seemed distant, sometimes struggling to meet my eyes. I caught her whispering into her phone once, ending the call abruptly when I walked into the room. "Just my mom checking in," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I didn't question it. I was too caught up in preparing for the baby, too busy decorating the nursery in soft yellows and greens, too focused on reading every parenting book I could find. I was going to be the mother I'd never had, warm, accepting, unconditional in my love. The nursery reveal party was my idea. A celebration of the village it takes to raise a child, a gathering of everyone who would surround my baby with love. I spent weeks planning every detail, from the decorations to the menu to the photo slideshow I'd put together of Tasha's pregnancy journey. The morning of the party, I called Marcus to ask if he could pick up the balloon arrangement from the party store. He answered with that casual "Hey, babe" that I'd heard 1,000 times before, promised to grab the balloons, and said he'd see me at home. But he didn't hang up. And then I heard everything. "Just wait until her father's check clears. Then we'll take the baby and leave her with nothing." I've replayed those words in my mind 1,000 times since that day in the parking lot. Each time, they cut just as deep. Each time, I feel my heart breaking all over again. After I dropped my phone, I sat there on the concrete for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. A woman stopped to ask if I was okay. I couldn't answer her. How do you explain that your entire life has just been revealed as a lie? How do you put words to a betrayal so complete that it rewrites your entire history? Eventually, I got up. I left the groceries in the cart, got into my car, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove, tears streaming down my face, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I ended up at my father's house. The same house where I grew up, where I learned that I wasn't good enough, where I first met Marcus at that birthday party. My father took one look at my face and opened his arms without a word. I collapsed into them like I was 12 years old again, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. "Tell me," he said simply. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." So I told him. Every word I'd heard, every realization that had crashed over me in that parking lot. The affair. The betrayal. The plot to steal my baby and my inheritance. My father held me while I cried, his own body rigid with barely contained rage. When I finally exhausted myself, when the tears ran dry and I had nothing left but hollow emptiness, he pulled back and looked into my eyes with an intensity I'd never seen before. "They will not get away with this," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I promise you, sweetheart. They will not win." The weeks that followed were a blur of legal consultations, private investigators, and carefully concealed preparations. My father insisted on discretion. We couldn't let Marcus and Tasha know that I knew, not yet. Not until we had everything in place to protect myself and my baby. It was the hardest performance of my life. Going home to Marcus every night, sleeping beside him, pretending that nothing had changed. He'd kiss me good morning, and I'd taste the lies on his lips. He'd ask about the baby, and I'd see Tasha's face behind his every word. I learned things during those weeks that destroyed whatever hope I had left. The private investigator my father hired discovered that Marcus and Tasha's affair had started long before the surrogacy. 2 years, to be exact. 2 years of sneaking around behind my back, of lying to my face, of sharing moments that should have been ours alone. The investigator found emails, text messages, hotel receipts. He found photos of them together on trips Marcus had told me were business-related. He found evidence of money, my money, being funneled into accounts I never knew existed. But the worst discovery came from an old colleague of Marcus's who had agreed to talk off the record. Everyone knew he married her for the money, the colleague said. Marcus made no secret of it. He'd joke about it at happy hours, talk about his investment in Camille Richardson. The surrogacy thing, though, that was calculated. He and Tasha figured out they could use the baby as leverage. If Camille ever tried to divorce him, he'd have parental rights. And since Tasha was the one carrying the baby, they could claim she was the real mother if things went sideways. Parental rights. They wanted to use my child as a bargaining chip. As leverage. As a weapon against me. I had thought I knew the depths of human cruelty. I was wrong. During those weeks of pretending, I watched Marcus and Tasha with new eyes. I noticed every glance, every whispered conversation, every lie that fell so easily from their lips. Tasha came to our house almost daily, her pregnancy excuse giving her unlimited access to Marcus under the guise of godmother support. I watched them together, the familiarity of their touches, the intimacy of their smiles. How had I missed it? How had I been so blind? One evening, I came home early from a supposed dinner with my mother, another lie I'd learned to tell with surprising ease. The house was quiet, but Marcus's car was in the driveway. I moved through the rooms silently, my heart pounding with a dread I couldn't name. I found them in the nursery. The room I had decorated with so much love, filled with carefully chosen furniture and hand-painted murals. Marcus stood with his arms wrapped around Tasha's pregnant belly, my baby's belly, and they were laughing about something I couldn't hear. "She's clueless," Tasha said, loud enough for me to catch. "It's almost too easy." I stepped back before they could see me, pressing my hand against my mouth to stifle the sob that wanted to escape. The image of them standing in that nursery, in the room I had created for my child, burned itself into my memory like a brand. That was the night I stopped grieving and started planning. My father's lawyers worked around the clock to protect me. We uncovered the extent of Marcus's financial manipulation, years of siphoning money from our joint accounts, hiding assets, building a safety net for the life he planned to live without me. We also discovered something that changed everything, a clause in the surrogacy contract that Marcus had insisted on including. At the time, he'd explained it as protection for Tasha, a way to ensure she had legal standing if anything happened during the pregnancy. I'd signed it without question, trusting my husband's judgment. The clause gave Tasha significant rights over the baby. Rights that could be exercised if she claimed the standard surrogacy arrangement wasn't honored. Rights that Marcus clearly planned to exploit once they were ready to make their move. But my father had lawyers who specialized in finding loopholes. They found a provision that would invalidate the entire clause if it could be proven that Tasha had entered the arrangement with deceptive intent. All we needed was evidence that she and Marcus had planned this from the beginning. We got that evidence from the most unexpected source, Tasha's own mother. Mrs. Patricia Williams had always been kind to me. A hardworking woman who had raised her daughter alone, she had treated me like a second child throughout my friendship with Tasha. When she called me out of the blue and asked to meet, I didn't know what to expect. We met at a small cafe far from our neighborhood, somewhere we wouldn't be recognized. Mrs. Williams looked older than I remembered, worry lines etched deep into her face, her eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been crying. "I know what they're doing," she said before I could even sit down. "I know, Camille, and I'm so sorry. I'm so terribly sorry." She told me everything. How she'd overheard Tasha and Marcus planning months ago, how she'd confronted her daughter and been shut out completely. How she'd struggled with whether to tell me, torn between loyalty to her child and horror at what Tasha had become. "This isn't how I raised her," Mrs. Williams sobbed. "I don't know when she changed, when she became so hard, so selfish. But I can't stand by and watch her destroy someone who's only ever shown her love." She gave me recordings. Conversations she'd secretly captured when Tasha didn't know she was listening. Evidence that proved, beyond any doubt, that the surrogacy had been a scheme from the very beginning, a way to gain control over me, my money, and my child. I hugged her for a long time, both of us crying for the relationships we'd lost and the innocence we could never reclaim. The confrontation happened 3 days before my due date. I had planned every detail with my father's help. The location, our home, where I wanted to reclaim my power in the space they had defiled with their lies. The witnesses, my father, his lawyers, and a detective who had helped gather evidence. The timing, when Marcus and Tasha would both be present, unable to run or deny. They arrived together, of course. They didn't even bother with separate entrances anymore, too confident in my ignorance to care about appearances. Tasha waddled in with her swollen belly, complaining about back pain, while Marcus followed with his hand on the small of her back. The intimacy of that gesture made me sick. "Camille!" Tasha exclaimed, her eyes going wide when she saw the people gathered in our living room. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" I stood in the center of the room, flanked by my father on one side and his lead attorney on the other. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't pretending. I let them see every ounce of pain, every bit of rage, every piece of my broken heart. "Sit down," I said, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. "Both of you." Marcus's charm faltered for the first time since I'd known him. He exchanged a look with Tasha, that familiar, conspiratorial glance that I now recognized for what it was, and attempted his usual deflection. "Baby, what's wrong? You're scaring me. Is it the pregnancy? Is something wrong with?" I said, "Sit down." They sat. I took a breath, feeling my father's hand squeeze my shoulder in support. Then I began. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. "That's how long you stayed on the line that day, Marcus. That's how long I listened while you planned to steal my child and leave me with nothing." The color drained from his face. Tasha's mouth fell open, her hand moving automatically to her belly, to my baby. "I know everything," I continued. "The affair. The money. The clause in the contract. I know about the accounts you've been hiding, Marcus, and the trips you took together while telling me you were at conferences. I know this pregnancy was never about helping me become a mother. It was about control. It was about my father's money. It was about taking everything I had and leaving me destroyed." "Camille," Tasha started. "Don't." My voice cracked for the first time. "Don't you dare speak to me. 23 years, Tasha. I loved you like a sister. I would have done anything for you. When your mother couldn't make rent, I was there. When you needed money for school, I was there. When nobody else believed in you, I was there. And this is how you repay me? By sleeping with my husband and stealing my child?" Tears were streaming down her face now, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. No compassion. Just a cold, hollow void where my love for her used to live. Marcus tried to fight. He tried to claim that I was being manipulated, that my father had turned me against him, that the evidence was fabricated or taken out of context. He tried to use the charm that had won me over all those years ago, looking at me with those eyes that used to make me melt. But I saw him clearly now. I saw the calculation behind every smile, the manipulation behind every tender word. I saw a man who had never loved me, who had married my father's money and spent 12 years waiting for his payday. "The contract is void," my father said, his voice cutting through Marcus's protests like a blade. "The surrogacy agreement was entered under fraudulent pretenses." "I'm sorry," she sobbed, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "Camille, I'm so sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. I was in love with him. He made me feel." "Stop." I held up my hand. "You don't get to apologize. You don't get to make this about your feelings or your mistakes or your regrets. You looked me in the eye for 2 years while you slept with my husband. You offered to carry my child while planning to take everything from me. That's not a mistake. That's not love. That's something broken inside you that I could never fix and I'll never understand." In the end, they lost everything. The courts invalidated the surrogacy contract based on fraud. Marcus was forced to return every penny he'd stolen, plus additional damages that left him bankrupt. Tasha faced her own legal consequences, accessory charges that resulted in probation and community service, along with a civil judgment that would follow her for years. My baby, my beautiful daughter, Elena, was born 2 weeks after the confrontation. The birth was complicated, requiring an emergency C-section when the stress of the legal proceedings sent Tasha into early labor. For one terrifying moment, I thought I might lose the child I'd fought so hard to protect. But Elena came into the world screaming, her lungs strong and her grip fierce, as if she already knew she was a fighter. She had my eyes and my mother's cheekbones, a perfect blend of the family that would surround her with real, unconditional love. I held her for the first time in a hospital room filled with my father's tears and the echoes of everything I'd survived. Looking down at her tiny face, I felt something shift inside me, a crack in the armor I'd built, a softening of the edges that betrayal had sharpened. "You're safe," I whispered to her. "You're loved. And nobody will ever hurt you. I promise." The first year of Elena's life was the hardest healing I've ever done. Not because of her, she was a joy, a miracle, a reason to wake up every morning with hope instead of dread. The hard part was learning to trust myself again. Learning to believe that I was worthy of love, that I wasn't so fundamentally flawed that people would always choose to betray me. I started therapy 3 weeks after giving birth. My therapist, Dr. Michelle Roberts, specialized in trauma and betrayal. She helped me understand that what happened wasn't my fault, that the people who hurt me had made their own choices for their own reasons, none of which had anything to do with my worth as a person. "You gave love freely and openly," she told me during one session. "That's not a weakness, Camille. That's a strength. The people who took advantage of that love are the ones who should be ashamed, not you." I worked on setting boundaries, on listening to my intuition, on believing the red flags instead of explaining them away. I worked on forgiving myself for being trusting, for wanting love so badly that I couldn't see what was right in front of me. I even worked, eventually, on forgiving them. Not for their sake. For mine. Holding on to hatred and anger was like drinking poison and waiting for them to die. It was eating me alive, stealing my energy, keeping me tethered to people who didn't deserve space in my thoughts. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean excusing what they did or pretending it didn't matter. It meant choosing to release the grip their betrayal had on my heart. It meant deciding that they wouldn't have power over my future the way they'd had power over my past. 2 years have passed since that day in the parking lot. Elena is a toddler now, all curls and giggles and fearless exploration. She calls my father Papa and makes him laugh in ways I haven't heard since before my mother passed away last spring, a complicated grief that taught me you can mourn someone who hurt you while also mourning the relationship you wished you'd had. I've learned things about myself I never knew before. I'm stronger than I thought. Braver than I believed. Capable of surviving things that felt like they would kill me. I started a foundation in Elena's name, supporting women who've experienced financial abuse in relationships. So many women stay in bad situations because they don't have resources, because their partners have controlled their money and their options. I wanted to give them choices. I wanted to give them the power I almost lost. Marcus remarried last year. A woman he met at a networking event, wealthy and naive, just like I once was. I thought about warning her. I stayed up nights wondering if I had a responsibility to tell her what kind of man she was marrying. In the end, I didn't. Not because she didn't deserve to know, but because I knew from experience that she wouldn't believe me. She would have to learn the truth the way I did, through her own pain, her own awakening. All I could do was hope her awakening came before he destroyed her completely. Tasha tried to contact me once, about 6 months ago. A letter, handwritten, pages long. She apologized again, explained her choices, begged for a chance to be in Elena's life. She claimed she'd changed, that losing our friendship had forced her to confront parts of herself she'd been running from for years. I read the letter 3 times. Then I burned it. Maybe someday I'll be ready to hear her story. Maybe someday I'll want to understand how someone I loved so completely could have hurt me so deeply. But not today. Today, I'm still healing. Today, Elena's laugh is the only melody I need, and the circle of people I trust is small and carefully chosen. And that's okay. Small circles can hold infinite love. I know that now. If there's anything this journey has taught me, it's that betrayal doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do after. How you pick up the pieces. How you learn to love again, carefully and completely, without letting fear make you hard. I was broken. Shattered into so many pieces I didn't know if I could ever be whole again. But I gathered those pieces, one by one, and I created something new. Not the same Camille who existed before, she's gone forever. But a new Camille. A stronger one. A wiser one. A woman who knows her worth and won't let anyone steal it again. Elena will grow up knowing she was wanted. Fought for. Protected. She'll know that her mother walked through fire to bring her into this world, and that same mother will walk through fire again and again to keep her safe. She'll also know that love is worth the risk. That trust, given wisely, is one of the most beautiful things humans can share. I refuse to teach her to be afraid of opening her heart, even though mine was broken so badly. I'll teach her to be discerning. To listen to her instincts. To believe people when they show her who they are. But I'll also teach her that love, real love, the kind that doesn't demand or deceive or destroy, is worth every risk it requires. Because in the end, that's what I found on the other side of my heartbreak. Real love. From my father, who never stopped fighting for me. From my daughter, who taught me what unconditional means. From myself, finally, after 39 years of believing I wasn't enough. I am enough. I always was. It just took losing everything to finally see it. My father passed away 8 months ago. Peacefully, in his sleep, with Elena's drawing clutched in his hand and my photo on his bedside table. The grief almost broke me all over again. After everything I'd survived, losing him felt like the cruelest blow of all. He was supposed to watch Elena grow up. He was supposed to see me finally happy, finally healed, finally whole. But he left me with something more valuable than money or protection. He left me with proof that I was lovable. For 37 years, even when I couldn't love myself, he loved me. He saw me. He believed in me. And that love lives on in every choice I make, every boundary I set, every moment I show up for myself and my daughter. I scattered his ashes at the lake house where we spent summers when I was young, before my mother's criticism became unbearable, before I started believing I was deficient. Elena threw flowers into the water, not understanding why Mama was crying but wanting to help anyway. "Papa's with the fishies now," she said solemnly, and I laughed through my tears because he would have loved that. He would have scooped her up and tickled her and said something like, "That's right, baby girl. Papa's swimming with the fishies." I carry him with me now. In my heart, in my decisions, in the way I love my daughter without condition or reservation. He taught me what real love looks like, and I'll spend the rest of my life honoring that lesson. So here I am, at the end of this story and the beginning of a new chapter. 39 years old, a single mother, the sole heir to a fortune I never asked for but have learned to steward wisely. I wake up every morning to Elena's laughter and go to sleep every night knowing I survived something that could have destroyed me. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe I'll find love again, real love, with someone who sees me for who I am and not what I represent. Maybe I'll stay alone, building my foundation and raising my daughter and discovering new depths of happiness I never knew existed. Either way, I know I'll be okay. More than okay. I'll be free. That's the thing about betrayal, it can imprison you or liberate you. It can make you bitter and afraid, or it can strip away everything false and leave only what's true. I chose liberation. I chose truth. And every day, I choose to believe that the worst thing that ever happened to me was also the doorway to the best life I've ever lived. Marcus and Tasha took my trust. They took my innocence. They almost took my child and my future. But they didn't take me. They couldn't. Because I am more than their lies, more than their greed, more than the years I spent believing I was only as valuable as the love I could earn. I am Camille Richardson Hayes, mother to Elena, daughter of William, survivor of fire. And I am enough. I was always enough. It just took burning down my whole life to finally see the truth. I want to leave you with this: if you're reading my story and seeing yourself in these pages, if you've been betrayed, manipulated, made to feel worthless by people who should have loved you, please know that your ending isn't written yet. The people who hurt you don't get to decide who you become. The pain you've experienced isn't the summary of your worth. You are not defined by how others treated you, but by how you treat yourself after the storm passes. Get up. Even when it hurts. Even when you don't think you can. Get up and take one step, then another, then another. Find the people who love you, really love you, and let them hold you while you heal. Find yourself, maybe for the first time, underneath all the lies you've been told about who you are. You are worthy of love. You are deserving of honesty. You are enough, exactly as you are, without earning or proving or performing. And if no one has told you that today, let me be the first. I see you. I believe in you. And I know, with every fiber of my being, that you will survive this too. Now let me ask you, one survivor to another, what will you choose to build from the ashes of your betrayal?